staying in Nigeria, let's move on now to some news headlines across the globe, looking at our newspapers. And of course, we begin here in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. Now, there are many different stories across Nigerian papers today that definitely look at the economy, the NNPCL, and we will discuss that. But one story that jumped out to me on the front page of This Day looks at the fact that more than 1 in 4 children born to Nigerian men are not theirs. Now, that's according to a report released by Smart DNA, a testing center here in Lagos. Off the back, my friends, please. Off the back of analysis from the same testing center released last year, This Day did its own independent checks of their data last year and this year, and they found that the number of children born to men who are not the biological father rose by just under 1%, 0.88%. Now, if we look at those numbers from July 2022 to June 2023, the number of negative tests was 26.12%, and currently, that number has slightly risen, as I said, to 27%. Now, one of the reasons why people have been testing their children in the first place is for immigration purposes. People who want to leave Nigeria for another country, or perhaps dual citizens wishing to apply for a foreign passport for their children, and then, of course, needing to prove that these children are biologically theirs. So this is one of the reasons why we're seeing DNA being discussed in this way in the first place. But I thought it was quite an interesting story because, goodness gracious, it is a little salacious. 1 in 4. Goodness. Well, we'll come back to you for some comment on that, but let's stay on our newspapers. The New Telegraph is reporting that Nigeria has been delisted from the United States Federal Aviation Administration Category 1 status. Now, with this removal, no Nigerian airline, which includes Air Peace, for example, which is planning to commence its direct flight from Lagos to New York very soon, can operate directly to any city or airport into the United States until Nigeria is re-audited and recertificated by the FAA and return to its former status. Now, Nigeria did gain that accreditation back in August 2010 after a rigorous exercise that spanned about 5 years. But due to the combined factors of a drop in standards and the failure of different Nigerian airlines to operate directly to the US, even though, of course, Air Peace is trying to combat that for some time, stakeholders said that the country lost the rating. Now, again, I'm going to be really interested to hear what you guys think about this, because Nigeria's aviation system, for all of its all of the criticism that we can put on there, there's definitely a lot of positivity coming out of our aviation sector. And what Air Peace is trying to do is something that should be encouraged rather than frustrated. But we'll come back to that. And moving on to The Guardian is reporting that a fuel strike is imminent as the NNPCL admits that it does have a $6.8 billion fuel debt. Now, some 2 weeks ago, the NNPCL had denied owing international traders, which is now been debunked. That being said, the Port Harcourt refinery is expected to begin operations later on this month. We again are in September, we'll see. And then the Nigerian Tribune and the Daily Trust both report on the legitimate prospect of petrol scarcity worsening nationwide as the NNPCL's financial constraints strengthen. Now, former Nigerian Vice President Atiku Abubakar has called for the NNPCL to be listed on the stock exchange, perhaps to save them. I'll come to you for comment in just a second. Let's run through some international papers, because we're going to be talking about what you guys had mentioned about right wing, about racism here. So The Guardian UK, much like many UK and international papers, has led with the killing of those 6 Israeli hostages and the protests that have taken place in Tel Aviv, calling for a ceasefire and for Benjamin Netanyahu to step down. The Mirror, though, the Mirror takes a look at a surge in race hate in schools across the UK. Almost 60 children a day were suspended from school last year for racism. And thirdly, the Daily Telegraph in the UK is reporting that Ofsted is to scrap its one-word ratings, of outstanding, inadequate. They're taking away that system of just one-word ratings, and that may, in some parts, be due to the death of a head teacher, Ruth Perry, back in 2023. She took her own life following a downgrade of her school from outstanding to inadequate. So these Ofsted rankings, they do mean a lot for parents who are looking for schools, and obviously, as you can see, to some head teachers, it was reported that this head teacher did also have mental health issues, but she did take her life following the downgrade of her school. So a lot to discuss there.
Couple of things. I want to talk about the NNPC first. 2 things we have to say. You cannot list a company that has this woeful corporate governance. You need to fix the corporate governance, number 1. How they're going to do it, I don't know. Some people will have to go. I'm not mentioning names, but some people will have to go. If you truly want to fix NNPC, then you have to start rebuilding the culture, because culture will eat strategy for breakfast. They've had a moribund culture of incompetence all these years. 2, you need to sell off some assets. The 4 refineries are moribund. In the last NNPC report, 4 trillion has been spent on those refineries that don't put one single petrol out there. They've got to go. Also, the JVs. NNPC has 55%, 60% in some and all of that. With all the wealth,
portfolio.
You need to sell off some of them because in the end, NNPC does not even have the money to put forward its paid up capital in the first place. If you have to sell them to raise money, run a more nimble, agile NNPC, I think these are the way forward. But you cannot list a company with this deplorable state of corporate governance, maybe except if you list it, it will also show the lack of integrity of the stock market here because we are not serious. Secondly, as regards 1 in 4 children, it's very sad the level of infidelity that goes on. I think Durex did a report, Durex, the makers of condoms, did a report a couple of years ago talking about the infidelity in Nigeria, women, and they were saying over 60%, but also more infidelity in men. So it's both ways, really, in the end.
Yes. I think that is a very important point to make. It's happening both ways.
It's both ways. See, for me, I can't just understand the hypocrisy of society. They're legitimizing fidelity in men, but they say women cannot do it. That's what I can't understand. But I will quote my very great sage and very dear friend and dear colleague, Dr. Ruben Abati.
Okay.
That says, in Africa, there are no illegitimate children.
I agree. I agree.
Only legitimate parents.
Okay.
As some people say. I'm looking forward to Dr. Abati's comments on this 1 in 4 children not being, because I saw immediately you mentioned it. He sat up straight.
There was a reaction
to that very shortly. But I do believe that a good report by this day newspaper, and it just details, and like you already shared, the reason why we've seen an increase. Because doing DNA paternity tests, we're not seeing at some point. But after a while, we've seen, and like you said, you cited, because of this migration and people wanting to find out for reasons of migration.
Yes.
One thing I must say, though, is that we must also test the integrity of the tests.
Thank you.
The reason I'm saying this is because I recall that my mom went for a test. My mom has been AA all her life.
You see?
And then she went to a hospital and they told her she was SS. And it was just the integrity of the test. I'm not denying, I'm just saying that I would like to know the source, methodology, just to test it, to make sure that we're not putting people in trouble as a result of inefficiencies, because the numbers are quite alarming. 1 in 4, that's a lot. Then, with regards to racism, because that's quite close to my heart, if you look at it, some people have called for a number of things to begin to address these issues. Earlier, I talked about the fact that it seems like the world as a whole is becoming more intolerant. Right. Remember, there was a time when the buzzword was about globalization, the world becoming a global village. After a while, we're all going to be able to connect with ourselves. And that's what the internet largely has helped us to do.
Absolutely.
To just, to make the world a smaller place. But it seems like as the world has grown smaller, we are now fighting for room, making people more hostile to one another. Of course, we also see the economic, the economic reason sometimes for rise in hostilities. When there are less resources to go around, people become more hostile. They begin to say that, oh, this is my father's place, this is black, this is white. Another study by Stanford University shows that even the grouping, when you fill forms and you put, what race are you, white American, black American, already sends a psychological message to you that this is a particular group. And first of all, I'll deal with my own group first. So maybe we might want to consider scrapping those things and seeing people as human first before we begin to talk about race. We cannot deny race, but also not making it very prevalent or too important. Finally, the other part was what I thought I agree with, which is that let us stop looking at why people behave, in a racist manner. Instead, push ways to make people anti-racist.
Absolutely.
So positivity as opposed to, why are you or punishing? But really, from a very young age, catching them young studies and ensuring that people learn how to be. I do believe that it's a big issue that needs to be addressed. If not, we wake up one day and we are not able to handle this monster.
Okay, the story of the day, in my view, 1 in 4 persons are not being born to their fathers. And the question is, how did they arrive at this? They said from DNA tests conducted for immigration. And at the agency, the body that did it is the leading DNA center in Lagos. And the report is saying that 53% of Yoruba women give their husbands on the average, about one, child that does not belong to the man. And then 33.3% of Igbo women are also said to be guilty. But most of the data is from just Lagos. between mainland and the island. I think that we should not generalize on the basis of that. That does not give a full reflection of what is happening. They argue in their report that there is a changing dynamics in the home front among families. So, but we must resist the error of saying on the basis of this test that, Yoruba women, 53% of them, give poor children. The second point is about the integrity of the test, which Ayo alluded to. There is this apocryphal story which happened here, they say, in Nigeria, of a man who had an X-ray test in one of these laboratories in Lagos. And the result was that there was a cockroach locked in his chest. So the man sought a second opinion and went to the UK, where the doctor said there was no cockroach in his chest. That, the cockroach must be in the machine itself. And we've had many cases of misdiagnosis in this country. You remember the legendary Gani Faweime. He reported at a point that he was misdiagnosed in Nigeria until he got to the UK and he got a different result. And there are many families who will seek a second opinion in places where there are better equipment. The danger in demonizing Yoruba women and Igbo women living in Lagos is that you will cause a crisis in families.
Just innocent daughters of Zion just being accused of doing something that they have not done.
You will cause a crisis in families because then men will become suspicious. There will be people going to all kinds of laboratories to take tests, many of which may have outdated equipment. The final point is that, as Rufai alluded to, for many men in Nigeria, there's no such thing as illegitimate children. Even in the eyes of the law, in the whole of Africa, no children is classified as illegitimate, okay? So if you are the father of children, in fact, I know a very prominent man in Nigeria. I was asking him, I said, some of these children in your house, they are children you have taken from your friends that died, from other sources. You have added to your own children. If you want to write your will, are you going to cover everybody? He said, no, where I come from, everybody is a child. Everybody is legitimate. So you are dealing with science on one hand, but there's also culture on one hand. So I will not go as far as saying, some women are guilty. No. But DNA testing has become a big issue. The most recent issue is with the widow of Mohbad, the popular singer. Yes. So we should be careful. And please, Adefemi, with this kind of story, don't encourage bachelors. At all. Who will jump on it? Bachelors like present company and the one that will come later, who will say, one DNA test has said, 1 in 4. Let me not marry. My
own is that they should also test the mother. So if you're saying that the father is not the true father of the child, is the mother the true father of the true mother of the child as well? Let's protect women as well.
It's mostly for the father.
No, the mother.
But you never know.
Also switches.
They can switch babies at birth.
I've heard cases where both were not, and they discovered that something was tampered with. So let's not.
As for Ofsted, which is a story in some of the papers in England today. Yes, because of Ruth Perry, who died, and pressure from the labor unions. Yes. Now they've said what they will now do in replacement is what is called report card. And that program is going to commence September 2025. Yes. So this is a government that is responsible to outreach. Yes. But the other part of it is that I would like to see a situation where they begin to rate schools in Nigeria too. Somebody cannot come from Akungba Akoko University and come and be rated the same as somebody who graduated from the University of Calabar or the prestigious University of Ibadan or the University of Lagos. But we don't have a rating system here. You just hear all kinds of people from different schools.
Universities, and Calabar is not even top 10.
No, Calabar is okay. What are secondary schools? All the people from Igbo secondary school who will come and sit down with very distinguished people.
The schools like Fabulous UNAB, we are number 1.
No, Covenant University. I think
Covenant is number 1.
I would like to see a rating system in Nigeria, from the workplace, from the school to the workplace.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adefemi. It's so great to have you here, physically with us in the studio. See you again tomorrow.